During the deadliest typhoon in years, a silent delivery driver commandeers a massive military truck no one else can operate and races into a cut-off village with children on the brink of death. Villagers watch in shock as this quiet foreigner performs a rescue beyond imagination. But when the storm clears and officials arrive, they learn his true identity and the secret he has been hiding from the world all along. Hit like and comment where you're watching from. Your support brings more amazing stories. Now, let's begin. The wind ripped roofs from houses like paper. But what stunned everyone was the man behind the wheel. He had always been just the quiet foreigner who delivered groceries. But now, in the middle of the worst typhoon in 20 years, he sat behind the controls of a military vehicle no one else could operate. His face locked with eerie calm like he had done this before. As the storm raged and lives hung in the balance, townspeople whispered the same question: who is he? No one knew the answer except Daniel Hayes, and he had sworn he would never speak of it. 3 days earlier, Daniel had driven his dented delivery truck through the outskirts of Lacaron, a coastal town built on resilience. The locals liked him well enough. He delivered supplies with quiet precision and never charged extra for difficult routes. But no one knew why an American in his 40s had chosen to live alone in the Philippines, tucked behind jungle hills, drinking instant coffee on a porch that overlooked nothing but trees and fog. He did not socialize. He did not talk about his past. And no one asked. But Typhoon Masaki asked up why the second day, the typhoon had already crippled power lines, blocked roads, and buried the mountain village of Ravenhill under debris. Children there were sick, cut off without medicine. A fleet of disaster response trucks had arrived from the city, including an advanced military recovery vehicle capable of crossing landslides and flood zones. But there was one problem: no one knew how to drive it. The soldier assigned to it stalled within minutes, gears grinding helplessly. Precious time was lost. Then Daniel Hayes stepped forward, but he never said a word. He simply climbed up into the cab, adjusted the seat, ran his fingers over the controls like he was greeting an old friend, and started the engine with a smoothness that stunned the entire crowd. The engine rumbled to life. The soldiers looked at one another. The local mayor tried to stop him, but Daniel only gave a look. Not rude, not aggressive, just final. Unquestionable. The vehicle moved, not with hesitation, but with certainty, like it had been waiting for him. But no one knew what haunted his hands. Rain hammered the windshield like fists, but Daniel's grip on the wheel never faltered. Beside him sat Lieutenant Marcos, who had insisted on coming along for the delivery, though it was clear within minutes that he was no longer in command. The dashboard blinked with readings the young officer could not decipher. But Daniel didn't glance at them. He navigated by feel, by instinct, like a man who had done this through sandstorms, gunfire, and worse. "Where did you learn to drive this?" Marcos finally asked over the roar of the storm. Daniel didn't answer. His eyes remained locked on the road ahead, or rather the ghost of where the road had once been. Mudslides had erased every known path to Ravenhill. Flooded creeks surged like rivers across cracked asphalt. Fallen trees blocked every official route. But Daniel knew better. He ignored the digital map altogether, taking a hard right onto what looked like nothing more than a forgotten trail. The lieutenant's eyes widened. "That's not on any logging road," Daniel said softly. "Built 30 years ago. Abandoned. Still stable. How do you—" But Daniel was already leaning into the next curve, downshifting with fluid precision that he had memorized these hills long ago. Not by sightseeing, but through repetition. While the villagers slept and rebuilt after each seasonal storm, Daniel had walked, measured, memorized every pass, every ditch, every narrow curve carved into the mountain spine. Not for leisure. For penance. In the back of the truck, crates rattled, antibiotics, 4 bags, food packs, water filters. Lives in boxes. And they all depended on a man who no one had trusted with anything more than change for a grocery run. The vehicle skidded briefly on a slope, hydroplaning toward a sheer drop. Marcos reached for the emergency brake, but Daniel's hand shot out, firm, calm. One calculated twist of the wheel. One sudden shift in weight. And the truck obeyed, crawling back onto the trail like a beast that only listened to its master. "You're not just a driver," Marcos said, voice nearly drowned out. "No," Daniel replied. "I'm not." Lightning forked in the distance, illuminating the steep pass ahead, blocked by a landslide. The mission, it seemed, had come to a stop. But Daniel Hayes had not survived wars and buried ghosts to stop now. Daniel didn't speak. He climbed back into the vehicle, rainwater running down his neck. He adjusted a pressure gauge, tapped a screen, and reversed just enough to gain momentum. Then, slowly, agonizingly, he started forward again. The tires bit into the slope, the vehicle groaning under its own weight. Marcos clutched the handlebar, watching mud shift beneath them. Any wrong move would send them tumbling down a ravine. But Daniel guided the truck with the precision of a surgeon. Millimeter by millimeter, the tires gripped the buried root system. The cab creaked. The engine strained. Daniel kept one eye on the ridge, the other on the incline. They cleared the landslide in under 2 minutes. Behind them, the mud sagged where they had passed, just seconds from collapsing. Marcos exhaled like he had been holding his breath for days. "You saved us." "No," Daniel said. "We're not done yet." The narrow road opened into a mist-covered ridge. Below it lay Raven Hill, barely visible. Shuttered windows. Dark roofs. The outlines of people moving like ghosts through the downpour. And somewhere in those homes, children waited, fevers climbing, lungs wheezing, parents praying that help would come before dawn. Daniel reached down and turned on the truck's PA system. His voice, deep and steady, echoed across the hills. "This is emergency transport. We have medical supplies. Clear a path." In Raven Hill, someone cried out in shock. They recognized the voice. Villagers poured into the muddy streets, slipping and stumbling through the storm as the roaring engine drew closer. Flashlights flickered through the rain. Some clutched tarps over their heads. Others simply stared in disbelief at the monster of a vehicle crawling down the mountain road, headlights cutting through the gloom like twin suns. When the truck rolled into the square, soaked villagers stepped back, unsure what to expect. Then the loudspeaker crackled again. "Dr. Moreno, we need a clear space in the chapel for triage." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "That voice," someone whispered. "Daniel Hayes?" another asked. But it couldn't be. Not the quiet American who fixed bicycles and kept to himself. Not the man who spoke with gentle politeness at the market and disappeared before conversations could turn personal. The back hatch of the vehicle hissed open. Daniel jumped down first, his boots sinking into the mud. He moved with a strange urgency. Disciplined, but not panicked. Marcos followed, hauling crates stamped with medical symbols. One by one, others began to help. Villagers passed supply boxes hand to hand, dazed but obedient. The quiet man they had once overlooked was now barking orders like a field general. "Boil water. Clear the tables. I need 6 people who know basic first aid." No one questioned him. In less than 20 minutes, the chapel was transformed. Blankets were spread. 4 bags were hung from rafters. The children came in waves, carried in their parents' arms, eyes glassy, fevers raging. Daniel opened a crate and began administering antibiotics like a man who had done this 1,000 times. He had. Marcos watched from the doorway, rain dripping off his helmet. "Who are you?" Daniel paused only a second. "Once, I trained convoy units in Afghanistan. Before that, Sudan. Lost men in both. Got tired of being saluted." Marcos was stunned. But why here? Why hide? Daniel's hands didn't stop working. Because some things you survive, but never really come back from. Hours passed. The storm finally began to ease, but Daniel kept working. Refusing food. Refusing rest. The chapel filled with a low hum of whispered prayers and coughing children, slowly stabilizing. One woman approached, tears in her eyes. "I had no idea. You're one of us, but more." Daniel looked at her and shook his head gently. "No. I'm just a man who came back when it mattered." Dawn broke over Raven Hill like a revelation. The clouds, exhausted from the storm, parted to reveal fractured beams of light. Children who had been burning with fever now stirred beneath blankets. Parents clutched them tighter, whispering thanks through trembling lips. Daniel stood outside the chapel, boots caked in drying mud, eyes fixed on the distant mountain pass. For the first time in hours, he was still. The exhaustion hit him all at once, but deeper than muscle or bone. It was the kind of weariness that lives in the soul. Behind him, villagers were already rebuilding. Some cleared debris. Others prepared meals for those still recovering. And scattered among them, soldiers in uniform moved quietly, taking orders not from their commander, but from the man who had saved the town. Lieutenant Marcos approached, holding a satellite phone. Call came through. Regional Command wants to meet the man who pulled